Good. No?
Thank you. Hi, Nick.
Ben's way is all fitting.
Nick, did you hear your introduction?
Missed it all. This is
Nick.
the first I'm hearing. I'm sure it was riveting.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, guys.
Unmute.
We can't hear you.
You there? How about
Nick,
now?
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Nothing?
But it's
Nick, we can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yes. James, can you log in, say something, see if it's Nick or you or us?
Nothing now, guys? Still nothing?
Hear us?
I can hear you. Yes.
That's a bad sign.
James, can you hear me?
Hear There you go. Nick?
Yes.
Ah,
Thank you.
There we go.
I was right.
All right.
Nick, I don't know whether you missed the beginning, but I was kicking it off to you to go through the current draft.
Sure, no problem. And good afternoon, everyone. So we were here maybe 6 weeks ago, earlier this summer, and had our first workshop. We received a lot of input, some favorable, some not favorable. So we tried to parse through it and apply the input to the ordinance. We put before the council now another draft, and the intent of the draft is to streamline this ordinance, make it as simple as possible, clarify some maybe unnecessarily confusing elements, and really just simplify things, as well as add certain areas that the council wanted to see. So I won't go line by line. I feel like as though we did that last time. I'll try to provide a summary of the sections of the ordinance and what it does and what it tries to do. So at its core, and this is the registration and inspection portion, what it does is it relates to rental units that are rented for 30 days. Those are our short-term rental units. The ordinance as drafted requires an annual registration with the town if folks desire to rent their units. How to go about that? There'll be a registration form that they have to fill out and file with the town, as well as a $250 registration fee. Additionally, in there is the opportunity, and it doesn't have to happen, but opportunity for the town to inspect the premises to make sure they're safe and habitable, and to determine the occupancy of those properties. That's not going to happen with every rental unit, but it gives the town the opportunity to have an inspection. Last time we discussed this ordinance, there was a lot of talk about occupancy, and that was one of the areas where the initial draft was confusing. So we cleaned that up. It seemed as though the council favored an occupancy limit of 2 people per bedroom, and the amount of bedrooms in a unit to be driven by the septic capacity of a house. Understandably, the council's concerned about environmental matters out there, so we wouldn't want rental units renting to a large number of people that exceeds the capacity of a unit's septic system. So occupancy is calculated by how many bedrooms the septic system is rated for, and then 2 persons can rent per bedroom. Additionally in there, and I think Sven, this might have been something that you were interested in. There was concern over disruption in residential areas with frequent turnover of rentals. I believe the example was houses that may rent for 2-day stints. And then within a residential neighborhood, there's very frequent turnover between the house watcher who comes in or the cleaner and the new renters that come in. And there was concern about that. So we added a minimum 5-day rental period in our residential RA and RB residential zones. Next, the ordinance puts certain obligations on the owner. In short, they have to provide renters with a copy of that registration form that provides a fair amount of information about the unit. That has to be given to renters. The owners have to maintain up-to-date contact information for their renters, and certain information has to be posted in a conspicuous place within the unit. That information is to include relevant town ordinances, basically to educate our visitors as to what is allowed and what's not in town. The occupancy capacity of a unit has to be posted, as does the unit's parking plan, contact information for the owner and representative, as well as the phone number for the police department. Basically, need to know information needs to be readily available for the renters. Moving further down, each rental unit has to have a local representative. The intent there is that if there's an issue with a rental property, town employees, mainly police, would have somebody on island or easily accessible to reach out to address those issues. And we put what I would deem a reasonable time period for those folks to respond to concerns, that being 2 hours. So if there, by way of example, if there were a noise complaint and the police department reaches out to the local representative by phone and maybe leaves a voicemail, that representative has 2 hours to get back to the police to address that issue. Lastly is an enforcement section, which gives some teeth to this ordinance, and any violation of the ordinance would be dealt with in the warden's court, and violations are punishable by up to a $200 per day citation. So that's painting with a broad brush, but that's the overview of the ordinance. Again, there aren't significant changes from when we were here last time, more stylistic and changes for purposes of clarity. And James and I are, of course, here for any questions that might come up, whether it be from the council or the folks in the audience.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
I had one quick question, if you don't mind, and it's more of a. So B&Bs, hotels, et cetera, are excluded, correct?
Correct.
And the short-term, what would that be? 8-326 occupancy, location limits, and other requirements under C, which is at the in my copy, the top of page 4. Short-term rentals in RA and RB zones shall be no less than 5 days in duration. There was actually an email that raised in my mind concern about shoulder seasons and shorter rentals in shoulder seasons. Would there be a legal impediment to, for example, limiting the requirement for a minimum length of stay to a particular season? So for example, if someone wanted to do a short-term rental in an RA or RB zone for 3 nights in the shoulder seasons, we could do that if we decided to.
Absolutely. That's an easy carve out. You can do that. In fact, earlier today, Marianne, I believe it was, raised, well, what if somebody wants to rent for a long weekend, maybe over Thanksgiving?
Right. That's what I'm thinking of too.
Right. Easy
Yeah.
carve out.
Okay. Great. Anybody on the council have any questions about this draft?
I had a quick question about the last page, about the fee. So we decided on a fine of not more than $200 per day because that's the maximum we can do in Warden's Court. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Sam?
Yeah, the only thing that I like this a lot and I like the newer version, and thank you, Nick, for recrafting it. In my opinion, I do want to do a little bit of math, as to whether 250 per unit will actually cover the costs of enforcement and management and all that. And it might, I do want to just sort of decide whether it should be 300 or, 200. I don't want to make it a big number, but I just want to make sure that it's self-sustaining. In my point of view.
Great. I said I had one question. I actually have two. Where's the bedroom definition from? Did we find that in another ordinance? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious whether that's a prevailing, could have been Middletown. Whether that's a prevailing definition. I was just curious. Except
So
in our house.
bedroom also appears in your zoning ordinance. So
In the zone, is that the definition from our
yeah,
zoning ordinance?
so for purposes of consistency, we use that same language.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Neil, any questions? Martha?
I wanted to hear what people's reaction.
Yes.
I'm still not. I don't think this has any, and this has been put forth as. This is, I know, been put forth as somehow being tied into affordable housing, which I don't see at all. And I'm just still not sure what's our objective here. Unfortunately, I have a rather visceral reaction to anything that reminds me of something they're trying to do in Nantucket. And this strikes me as Nantucket-ish.
And Jamestownish and Middletownish and Newportish.
Yeah.
Bristol.
And Bristolish.
To the extent, though, it always gets a little bit carried away.
What's that?
I'd like to hear what people have to say.
Great. Me too. Anybody want to start? Yeah, Arlene. Is that Arlene?
And
Yeah, come on up. Please make sure that you're speaking into the microphone and the light is green.
Now it
Say
is.
Who you are, et cetera.
I have just constructive criticism.
Please.
On the bedroom definition.
Arlene, will you just say your
Yeah,
name?
just say your name.
Oh,
sorry.
Arlene Tunney.
Yeah.
On the bedroom definition, the 70 square feet comes from the building code. That's
Right.
minimal size for a bedroom. But it should say at least one egress window instead of just a window, because an 18
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
18-inch by 24-inch window, you can't get out in case of fire. And, or it could be a door leading directly to the outside. It doesn't have to be a window, but it has to go directly out. So I think that should be added to that definition.
Did you pick that up, Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Kate. Sorry, Rich.
Kate Butcher, Block Island Realty. Just in response to Arlene, the definition of a bedroom with the egress, you know that's an issue, but we have a lot of houses that were built before that
Oh,
requirement.
interesting,
And
yeah.
I think if you guys are going to try and enforce these things, you have this laundry list of things that you're going to be enforcing. You're never going to be able to pay for that. Like,
Right,
that is-
right.
there are houses that are really old that don't have windows that are,
Right.
that RO, but that's going to be really difficult.
Okay,
Can
can I
yep.
say something to that? Do you mind?
Mhm.
Please. Oh.
So I guess that begs a question to me.
The safety. Yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
mean, I understand it, but
Yeah.
what's right and what's wrong? Do we say it's fine and?
If you're going to start
it's
enforcing these things, you're going to have to be
Right,
enforcing these
right,
things,
right.
right? You like
Yeah.
create an ordinance that you can't enforce,
Right,
Yep.
well, or, yes, or.
right?
Or it's not a rental, or,
Well, but who's going to be, I mean, that's, smoke detectors are one thing.
So I believe that in the beginning, the homeowner signs off that they are in compliance with all of these things.
Okay.
So it's not on the town. The town is not going, I think we've discussed this at the last meeting, that the town will not have a representative
But
going
it
to
does-
each house.
But it does say that in the,
May.
but
May, and, but the homeowner signs off that they're fully in compliance. So if there's any problem, the homeowner has signed off that
Right.
they are fully in compliance.
I think,
No, don't send that. Don't send that.
So if you'd like to speak, you can come up to the microphone like everyone else. Ben, if you'd like to speak, you may come up to the microphone with everyone else. But, it's not necessarily, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
It wouldn't actually, it would eventually be that way, I'd imagine, but not immediately.
Okay, so then when you get down to 8-326B, talking about the septic OWTS sizes, determining how many bedrooms
Yes.
you can rent to. It doesn't address sewer.
right, good point.
And
Yeah,
so that's something that, you know, we have plenty of houses that are on
that are on
sewer
sewer.
and,
Yep, good.
you know, and
point.
the other, and then it also, total number of bedrooms within the dwelling unit. Well, like, for example, I have a house that I rent, it's my house that has 3 bedrooms. I'm sorry, it has 2 bedrooms, it has a 3-bedroom septic system. Like, you gotta be like,
Yeah,
you're gonna find houses, we have houses that have 4 bedrooms, we only rent to 6,
right.
you know? And so if you're going in and inspecting it, I don't want them, whoever's inspecting to assume that just because there's 4 bedrooms in the house, we're renting to 8 people. We're not always doing that. It's just,
Right,
we say it's 6, and we don't tell them there's a 4th bedroom and let them, they show up and there's a 4th bedroom.
right.
Because we
right.
don't want to overload it. So I
Yes.
think that the inspection could go a little haywire with that.
Yes, that's, yeah.
And the parking plan, why do you need a parking plan? I mean, that's gonna, these people filling out these applications, that's gonna throw some of these people over the, over the ledge, honestly. Most of these houses have plenty of parking. You're not talking about a city rentals where there's, you know, no off-street parking. All right, well, I'm not done. And then yep,
How about on-site parking?
that's what I'm saying, on-site, most houses have on-site.
Right, that's, but instead of a parking plan on-site, just on-site parking.
Just saying, you know, even if, yeah, and then, I mean, originally, the last draft had that you wanted a parking space for every bedroom.
Yeah.
That's
right,
a
yeah,
nightmare.
no, yeah.
And then the owner's obligations to post all of this information in the house. I think if you you know, the model and color and vehicle registration of each car that's going to be at a house. I mean, you have tenants that change their mind about what car they're bringing, you know, the morning
Right.
that they're coming. And so
Mhm.
that's enforcement for these agencies and the people that are taking care of these rentals. It's so that'll be so burdensome. And if they could, I don't think that we need to have the name of the owner posted in a house. Owners hire us to keep them, their information private. I mean, that's why our information is in the house. So that
Right. That's a good point, yeah.
The number and location of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, you've already gone through the house or the owner's already verified that they're in, you know, meeting code. If you tell them the tenants can look up and see where the smoke detectors are there above their heads. They're not hard to find. They do find them because they take them apart all summer long when they start going off because of the
So-
fog.
Can I jump back one?
Yep.
Kate? I get name and telephone number for the record owner. What about name and telephone number for the local representative?
Well, that's we put
that-
that on the refrigerators with the police information with, you know,
Yeah.
at least my office does.
Yeah, I mean,
I know that the rest of the rental.
So I'm
agencies
not
do.
worried about this particular item. I wouldn't be worried about you guys. It's more the Airbnbs and
Yeah, no, I
those
get it.
people,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Okay, just the owner.
Yep.
I mean, it's just your local
Yeah,
representative.
absolutely.
If you're requiring them to have a local representative,
It should be the representative.
then it should be the
Right.
representative.
Whether it's an agent.
Yeah.
You know.
I think
So
that's,
can I interrupt you for? Kate?
Yeah.
So if we were to take F and G and sort of combine them to say that it would be the name and number of the local representative, that would that be enough? Because the homeowner may be their local representative, right?
if that,
Or,
and that's their, I mean, if they want their name on their refrigerator, great. That's, but
That, or maybe them as the representative.
Yeah.
right, so to Kate's point, it actually would undermine their business really, because if somebody decides, well, I'm just gonna contact the owner and
Yeah, I think it's great. And that's why we do these.
go
things.
around the real estate agent, that doesn't create a great situation either.
well, it's also tenants will call the owner in the middle of the night. They've hired us
Yeah,
to
right.
do that.
Absolutely.
To be that.
Yeah.
If we were to take F and G, what do you guys think about? coming-
I think it'd strike F
coming
and
up with
keep
some
G.
combination
Well,
there?
Nick, I think we're all, yes, yeah, this is Nick's.
Got it, guys. That's
And
a
then
good-
lastly, I just would want a little bit of clarification on the enforcement penalty or violations. Section C, which says the record owner shall be jointly and severally liable for renters and renters' guests for compliance with this chapter. As we all know, we can't control bad people. And I think that it'd be a shame for, regardless of who you, how you rent your house, your short-term rental. If, something really bad happens on a property, I think for a homeowner has enough issues to deal with. And I think that the town's now gonna give them fines on top of it because someone's a jerk, which we can't see coming. And I think that needs to be looked at more closely. Thank you.
I just want to, Kate, don't leave yet.
Yep.
So we have the egress. We have to acknowledge that there are some houses on sewer.
I mean, I don't know how you,
No, I just
Look
want to
into
make
that,
sure we
yeah.
have them all.
I just think that there's gonna be houses that have old houses, have small windows, they
Right.
don't necessarily, there's not gonna be a bedroom in the house that's gonna fit code
Right. Right,
by today's
Um,
standards, it's,
right.
start picking it apart like that and.
I just wanted to make sure I had them all.
Sure.
Thank you, Kate. Rich?
I think I'm here mostly to talk about the limiting or to the 5-night minimum.
Okay, great.
And also, but I do think while I get where we're trying to kind of just put something together for everybody, there's a lot of very different style rentals out here. And
Yeah.
Westerly is a good example. It's in my notes and I'll tell you about that. But I wrote it down because I'm not very good at remembering stuff when I'm a little nervous. Don't worry, it's big print. So I'm mostly here to represent myself and a few others who I call owner occupied, rentals.
Yeah,
So the short-term rental hosts, while you have hosts that invest in a house on Block Island and rent the whole thing, there are many that are outside of that profile. And I think that a lot of this, needs to be tweaked a little bit for different styles of rentals. So owner occupied landlords, and many of these people are doing and have been doing this as a result of choices they made based on a legal way to make some money for one reason or another. They gave up their job and started this new job. We have retirees who maybe didn't plan well enough for retirement. We have people who maybe worked a physical laborious job but no longer can. I know of one who lost a spouse at a young age and is now trying to put kids through college. This ordinance, as it is proposed with a 5-night minimum, will put a deep cut into their livelihood and could potentially take away their ability to, carry on and stay on the island. And I don't want to see more houses turn into weekly rentals. No offense to you realtors, which is probably the only alternative some people might run into.
hey, Rich, can I interrupt and ask a question
Sure.
about that? So we have I don't mean to ask you a personal question about your particular situation, but we have in our ordinances the ability to do two bedrooms.
Right.
Is
But
that
doesn't seem to be in here that's excluded.
right? We've got to make that clear that sort of a
And well, that's
I
my-
get you. That's very
my
helpful.
point is the gray
Yep.
areas
Yep.
that are left to this wide open. Now, this is gonna come into that.
Just to interrupt for 1 second, that's a different license. That's not this license.
No, I understand that, but okay, I own a two-family, so I don't need that license. Do I, you know what I'm saying? Like I have a rare two-family on Block Island, so I kind of fall into a gray area, but I'm owner occupied. I'm not handing, you know, one portion of my two-family over to a real estate, doing it, you know, ourselves. So the guests that stay in these spaces, they're a different breed, and they don't want to come here and party hardy and crawl upstairs to a hotel room. The question is often asked at the inquiry, do you live on the property? And when you say yes, that's the last you hear of them. And
Yes.
good riddance.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this, but I have to. So almost all guests of owner occupied short-term rentals have no interest in the party scene. They want to share a slice of Block Island heaven that includes going to the beach, exploring the beauty of the island, and going out for dinner at the end of the day and retreat to a quiet space. They're sort of the old school. And I think we need more of them. There are people that have been priced out of weekly rentals, but can afford $159 to come out and go bird watching for one night. The book club of 4 older ladies on an October weekend. The folks who can afford $500 for 2 nights to attend a family wedding, but can't afford a 5-night minimum or $1,000 hotel room stay, whether it be in August or in the fall or Thanksgiving. There are 80-year-olds who stayed at the Gables for 40 years and were displaced by ownership and gentrification, but because these owner-occupied spaces exist, they can still come and enjoy the island for 1 or 2 nights if they can. Wesley has a great example, and if you're owner occupied, you simply register, you pay the $100 fee, and you're good to go. They know you have a CO, you're doing it in a building that they've already approved for occupancy. Non-owner occupied rentals have a whole different set of standards, and you can look those up.
Hey,
I
Nick,
think the 5-night minimum is.
Excuse me
big.
1 second, Rich. Nick, will you look at Westerly and the owner occupied piece, please? Thank you.
I think the 5-night minimum is a big pill to swallow. You know, it's like, here's your restaurant license, but you can't serve shrimp and wine because you're on Corn Neck Road. The 5-night minimum will crush a sector of accommodations, pushing people to expensive hotels or completely out of the price range within their means. The B&B style restaurant rental has existed on Block Island long before full week rental business exploded. And as time changed, the new services arise like VRBO and Airbnb, and new problems arise with them. But I think there must be a way to address these problems without taking away the non-problematic sector. On a final note, I would say that 80% of the guests, and maybe people back me up or not, visiting for 1 to 3 nights don't bring a car. They walk, they ride bikes, they use our taxis, they don't cook. They go out and eat in local restaurants. This 5-night minimum will negatively affect owner-occupied rentals. It will cause financial hardship to owners. It will price out a wonderful group of polite island guests. It will increase traffic and parking problems because anybody coming for 5 nights is going to bring a car, and they're going to bring trash, and they're going to cook. So I don't know much about the non-occupied rentals. Seems like, you know, they have plenty of loopholes. Because if you told me it was a 5-night minimum, I would list it for $800 Friday night, $800 Saturday night, $800 Sunday night, and $1 for Monday and $1 for Tuesday.
Right.
And I would get my 5-night rental. I'm not really sure what the purpose of the 5-night minimum serves. I can only find the downsides of it. So in fact, the opposite, maybe a maximum night of 2 nights would be better for our island. So thanks for your time and for serving on a board where nobody ever shows up
Rich,
unless they're angry.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you. And I think that minimum number of nights is the thing that my eyes keep going. One of the things my eyes keep going to. So this was really helpful.
And the ladies in the book club was a non-occupied rental, for example. And
Right.
Love them as guests. They just
Yeah,
come out,
spend-
do their book club.
Yeah.
and they, you know. So-
Yeah,
So don't go with.
Oh, God.
go.
Okay, so.
Didn't I say no questions at the beginning?
You did, I'm not gonna keep this question, I'm just looking at you.
Okay.
So just as background, the minimum night dialogue started with frequency of, I'm gonna say, house watchers, maintenance, visitors coming in and out, and how do we not have a lot of people driving up and down access ways. That was how the discussion started a meeting or 2 ago. I don't remember when. And then sort of we didn't quite then get to the seasonality of it. And that is 99% summer based, that comment, versus the three other
Mhm,
seasons, right? The 9 months that we really love here. So I guess my question is your comment totally about days, or is it days in season?
All around. I mean, I think that if you were to put that 5-night minimum during the summer
July.
only, you're still gonna push people out of a place where maybe they have a nice peaceful retreat to enjoy a patio and, you know, and not be downtown in a hotel that's twice as much money.
Mm.
So it's an all around thing. And that's why I say, you know, maybe we need to view this as more of a, this is how we handle non-owner occupied places. Cause I tell you, people, you get really great people when you
Yeah.
know that.
Right, when they know you're gonna
And
be
I
there.
guarantee you, you're gonna get zero trouble calls from an owner occupied.
Well, the owner will go over and correct it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like the word correct.
yeah.
That's what I would use in this. I've never had to do it, you know, so.
I just like my clarification. When I made the comment I did at the beginning, and no offense to Nantucket, but when I first saw something about short-term rentals, they were talking about not allowing anything that was less than 30 or 60 days.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was a whole,
Yes.
so the premise being, the pretense being, I will say, you know, the quality of life of the people who leave on Labor Day. We
Absolutely.
all know what it was.
Yes, absolutely.
I understand, and
And
like
we
I said-
don't want that here.
Right.
no, and I just think that if it's a Wednesday in August and somebody wants to come out to watch the seals for one night and you have a night available, you should legally be able to let them come and stay with you.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I feel.
Yep.
So, all right,
Thank you.
any more questions?
I'm sure we'll have some. Don't leave. Christine?
Just as Rich said, I applaud you for being volunteer. My name is Christine Monjay. I live on Highview Lane in Block Island, and I applaud you for volunteering to do this job. The one thing that I would probably have caused me less stress is the part about applicability. If you could mention rooming houses in there, we're confused, I guess, more than anything else, is this applies to the exception is hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts. But as Molly keeps saying, there's another license out there called a rooming
Yeah.
house, but we're not experts in every licensing department. Could you reference rooming houses as well in here so that we know that the owner occupied person who's been following the rules, former minimum housing inspector's wife for many years. I've done the inspections. I've made sure I had the carbon monoxide. I've done everything right. And it's confusing, if nothing else, about this. You know, from these people out here have had what we call bed and breakfasts. I'm thinking of the Debbie Harts, the Terry McCombs. I mean, we've all had our little places in our homes that we rented to tourists. And so if it is a separate license, then it needs to be referenced in this so that you don't cause mass hysteria among the people.
Sure.
So that's one suggestion. And
That's a
then
good pickup.
another one is, you know, I guess because I'm an owner occupied person, I don't see the noise, congestion and pollution and disorderly behavior. You know, I clean my own rental. There's no one driving down the road,
Mhm.
just me. And so I just wonder about, I may have missed a couple of meetings, but what data do you have to support this other than the general intention that short-term rentals cause this? And if you don't have data about it, why is it that this type of commerce is being looked at? And that's the question I have.
So before you go away, I just asked Millie, the name of the license that you probably have and that all those other 2-room B&Bs had is called the rental room license.
Yeah.
And that is available to any homeowner pretty much on Block Island. You would have to speak to the town clerk about it, but it enables the majority of homeowners to rent up to 2 rooms in their home. And as a guest house or a B&B. So this would be like nightly. Or it could be to somebody for the summer. And you would have the minimum housing inspector come like you talked about. That's a different license. So it's not included in this license because it doesn't have anything to do with this license.
So she's saying in the
Under the exception.
in the exception.
Oh, put it in the
Yeah,
exception.
no,
Yeah.
she's saying put it in the
Yeah,
exception.
put in the exception, then you won't have
No, I'm
people
sorry, I
like
didn't
me
understand that.
read it and think, oh my God, things have changed.
Yes, right.
And because,
Okay.
we, in the seventies and eighties, you'd call them B&Bs. And then we call them rooming houses, and now we're calling them short-term rentals. They all do the same function. But I'm a short-term rental. I'm on Airbnb. You
Mhm.
call me a rooming house too, but I'm both. And so you have to delineate that and know that they.
Right.
No, that's a good point.
But Airbnb is just a platform, right? So you could have the 2 rooms in your house and list them on Airbnb.
Or
You're
my
still using that
website.
license.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
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 But I just really think it's important to list the exception under there that, for things that we've been doing for decades.
Right.
For,
Yeah,
and then
that's fine.
again, although I know that the state of Rhode Island allowed you this, to do this now, and this is, I think, why it started, because you have the ability to, to direct what's happening in this part of the commerce, part of this world of Block Island. But, I don't see that happening, noise, congestion, pollution, and disorderly behaviors happening on High Street at my Airbnb. I see it in other areas, but so if that is the foundation as to why this is coming about, I just wanted to know how and why it came about this way. That's all.
Before you head out, Rich, quick question. I apologize if I'm asking a question that you shouldn't answer, don't. Is there a kitchen in that second unit?
My house has 2.
You have 2 kitchens, right? And that's a big difference. So the homeowner occupied in your situation is really. a
They're 2
second
different things.
kitchen, right?
Yeah, they're,
Versus yours, which is, versus Kristen's, which is bedrooms.
Yeah.
Versus kitchen. And I think we need to acknowledge both of them.
This is right, so there's so many different styles that we can't just lump them into one. like
Right.
the owner occupied.
Right. So be clear and simple about it.
So you asked me if there's a kitchen, yes, so you didn't ask me if I included it.
No, but it's there.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, right.
So I'm legal and allowed it.
Yeah.
But no, it's still renting a hotel style.
Mhm.
A fancy.
That's really helpful.
Again, it's like, are you renting a full house? Are you renting a full apartment?
Mhm.
And again, we can't stop someone from renting 2 rooms in a house that they're not here. They keep you, there's so many variables and loopholes to watch out for. Or to allow, it all depends on, my biggest thing is there's ways to work around all of it. My main concern was that the majority of business, I don't know, what you agree, Christine, for us is short term.
Mhm.
I would say out of a 6-month season or 5-month season, I would say more than half is less than 5 nights. Would you say that?
Yeah, and I totally agree about the 5 nights,
Mhm.
as Rich said. We provide a service to people who can't afford to stay here for 5
Mhm.
nights.
So I just want to clarify something that Rich just said, which is that if you do have the rental room license, which is not this license that we're discussing today, but just to clarify, because I know there are a lot of people listening to the meeting, if you have a rental room license, your home needs to be owner occupied. So you cannot rent 2 rooms and not be there legally.
Yes, so if you take it a little bit farther too, everybody who's owner occupied, if for some reason you decided to leave Block Island, then you wouldn't be able to have that rooming house license. You'd have to
Right.
turn it over to a short-term rental, which would still impact us as citizens here as well. It would give us less options if we had 5 days,
Right.
couldn't go.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's another reason, even though I'm currently in a different category, maybe I won't be someday, and this will impact me in the future.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Stover, live on Block Island.
Will you move the microphone up
Oh.
so that we get you?
Can you hear it now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
It's just, I will get 462 texts about how they couldn't hear Mary.
Is there
Stover.
a
So I'm just-
volume
I'm
here?
just-
Does it
I'm
work?
just asking.
Okay.
This is all about me.
So we,
Can I just add really quickly, because this was a conversation earlier today, that Mary Stover and Keith Stover are not related.
we're not related, not at all. Now everyone knows, okay? No, nothing personal, but
I
we're
do
not
still
related.
Remember fondly when the hardware store above what's now Poor People's
Mhm.
used to send you our bills.
Yes, yes. Yes, we were very
Those are
quick
good
to
old
correct that. We corrected that right away. All right, so we've talked about rooming houses and various other types of renting property, but we haven't addressed fully the people that rent through real estate agencies.
Mhm.
We are licensed realtors. We have a code of ethics that we must follow, as well as contracts that are required, agency representation for each one of our clients. Those contracts are required by the state of Rhode Island as well as the Board of Realtors. And it states where our fiduciary responsibility is to each of our homeowners. That means we must protect their property and their rights, no matter what happens between our relationships. So if we are renting their house by the week, and by the way, rental agencies, I don't know how other ones work, but our rental agency only sticks to the weekly rentals. When people call for fewer days, we refer to the B&Bs, the hotels, and the inns, because there's enough business for everybody. That being said, when they receive this and we give out rental contracts, all of our rental contracts are detailed through approval from the Board of Realtors and a lawyer that shows the responsibility of each person, how many people they can have in the house, how many cars they're allowed to park. We base it on the number of people the house sleeps. We technically say 2 if it sleeps 4 people or more. If it sleeps 8, we'll say 2 to 3 at most. I have no control over how many cars they actually bring, but they actually sign a contract that states these things, as well as number of people. It also states that we'll check their property, we'll have their property maintained. If anything breaks, we'll fix it. If there are any complaints, we will address them immediately with the person there, and there are penalties involved. So that's very plain in each of our contracts. So this is redundant on top of that for each person that already signs an agency agreement with a real estate agency.
Already done.
It's already done.
Perfect. Even better.
Okay, so then you have in here about posting the ID of the people who own the property. That is actually against the Realtor Code, because our fiduciary responsibility is to protect our ownership's information. One of those, yeah, so that does have to be removed.
Yes.
As far as violations of law, because it says the reason for this legislation is in order to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Can you please cite, because Christine brought this up too as well, any violations from the police department of citations that have been issued, or because this would be public information from the police department, what violations of law, public health, safety, and welfare have been cited and been recorded at the police department? Do you have an address for any of these houses?
No, because usually I don't think citations are issued when police get a call to an unruly house.
So they have been called to unruly houses?
Oh,
This is
yeah,
my point.
Routine.
Okay,
Yeah.
So Mary, I think also when we say health, safety, welfare of the public, we're talking about the renters. So
Mhm.
this is a way to ensure that the renters are in an accommodation that is legal to be rented, that it is available to be inspected by the town, that the owner has certified is in order to rent. So that's what we're talking about. We're
well,
talking about-
my point is, as being professionals in our businesses, it would not be behooving of our profession or our continuation of business to represent things that are displeasing to the public, because we wouldn't be able to rent them. There would be,
You understand that this isn't just about you, right?
yeah, I understand.
that
This is
about
my point.
houses.
This is my point. there has to be some kind of designation. You say an on-island person has to be appointed. Well, if you are already represented by professional people in a real estate business and an agency
Then you're
with a
covered.
stated record, then I don't believe you should be having to also then pay $250 to register your house on the island. I'm going to keep talking. Everyone who purchases a house on Block Island has paid 3% for the Block Island Land Trust. That's 3%. Every person who rents a house on this island by the week has a 1% sales, in addition to the sales tax, added on for every rental dollar. That goes to the state and comes back to the town. That's a sizable amount of money. The third thing is every person that rents their house reports their income and pays 1% for the minimum housing. So those are percentages that are already paid by people who purchased here that are not necessarily paid by people who live in Westerly and other places. I don't believe they have minimal housing tax on all of their rental incomes. So there's a sizable amount of money being collected for this town already by people renting houses. It's a real wheel of the economy. We really make the wheel go of the economy out here. So that's my point, is they're already paying what I think is more than a fair share of what they're producing in the way of income for our towns. And if that's
I
the
can just
case,
Add to
yeah.
that, I don't disagree with you. I think the Land Trust is a great organization. You mentioned that, and thank God they're here. I think the goal of all of that is pretty clear in those steps. In my humble opinion, $250 is not a huge amount of money, and it's about just sort of covering those costs. I understand 1 + 1 is 3. I get it. Things mount up. The other thing is that I guess as I look at the total picture here, one person called me today and said, well, maybe we should scale it up. Right now, there are many homes, as you know, that are renting and an annual year, somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000 of rental income. Should that be at a higher rate? Should a lower, so there are different ways to do it, Mary. I'm just saying.
I understand.
$50 is not.
What I'm trying to point out is that a majority of the people paying this money, that's $250, that are already registered with real estate agents and paying percentage for their commission and all the other fees that have to be paid. I'm just saying, that's why I want to know the police report. Are these homes regulated by our real estate agents on this island problem homes? I'm going to say, I doubt it very much. I really think that these are what you're trying to pinpoint. If I can read through all of this correctly, and I've gone through it 100 times, is you're trying to figure out how to regulate Airbnb and VRBO and absentee landlords who rent weekly. Or am I correct? Seasonal landlords? As if what you're trying to address, I think this far-reaching legislation is going into fingers that really doesn't need to go into. And if these are the things you're trying to regulate because they are a threat to our public health, safety, and welfare, then I think it's really easy to isolate who those people are. This is a very small community. I know you're talking about Newport and various other places. What are the populations of those towns versus what they rent? We're talking 100,000 people.
Mhm.
At most in the summer, how many do you get here? 15,000? And that
No,
includes
a lot more than
everybody?
that, But
Yeah,
a lot.
okay.
A lot.
So what I'm saying is everyone knows everyone else. You know all these houses. If you have these violators, why aren't they being controlled? Why aren't the police being called? Why isn't the septic inspector being called? Why isn't a minimal housing inspector being called? We have all these people on staff that we already pay. Why aren't these situations solved when they occur? That's my point.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Greg?
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Fontaine.
Hey, Craig.
I have two points of support and one question. The first question I have is on the local representative definition.
Yes.
And the last sentence is said individual shall permanently reside in New Shoreham. That is a little ambiguous because residency is defined different ways in our statutes and
Yes.
In our ordinances. And I think the word domiciled might be more appropriate. Many people live here the majority of the time and travel or have a second home somewhere else, but domiciled here. And I think the real idea that the council is trying to get to is availability. You want people to be available and accountable. And so I think that would satisfy the requirement or satisfy the need. The other two things that I support, which already has been said, is I don't like the idea of having the owner's name on the rental information.
Yeah, right.
There could be a whole lot of reasons for that being a problem. And the last thing I wanted to comment on and have actually a problem with, I don't really support it, is the idea of vicarious liability. That's on 8330 paragraph C.
Nick, he's talking about vicarious liability. I hope you're paying attention.
That
None of us has a law degree, James.
as someone
As soon
said
as he said
earlier,
it, I
you
said,
really can't control.
this gentleman knows what he's talking about. I'm awake.
Someone earlier said you can't control bad people and never trust a lawyer as to what can happen with the definition of vicarious liability if something really bad happened. So
Right.
I think that's something that the council should.
Would you, Craig, just which section is,
That's
which
8330 subsection C,
subsection?
the
C?
joint and several liability.
Can I ask you a question about the resident issue?
Yes.
I'm just curious, would it be better if we said individual shall be a resident of New Shoreham? Or is it, in other words, is it the resident term? Because that's
Can I
defined.
just ask?
Yeah.
Which section?
So I'm in the definition section.
Yeah,
excuse
that's
me,
what I'm
Under
just looking to
local
find it.
representative.
Sorry,
Why don't we just stop
got it.
dancing around legal terms? And say what we're really talking about, somebody who's on the island.
Somebody who's here.
Yeah.
Can't we just say that? I'm so tired of who's a resident, what's a domicile, who isn't, who's here 6 months, who's here 9 months, how do you define it? You're here or you're not here, it's that simple.
Well, the problem with that,
Well, could
although I
you-
understand and
Problem with that because nobody's here, they just let us say that.
well, no, the practical problem is, what if I am renting my apartment and I am gone for 2 weeks on vacation somewhere? I'm not physically here.
You designate someone.
Yes, but what if what if I didn't have a real estate agent that I worked through? So that precludes someone from leaving during the summer season and renting. So I don't think that the ordinance should be that restrictive, but I think the real idea is availability. You want someone that's accountable. If something goes wrong, the cops can call them, get a hold of them. You want someone that's, and then, that's, I think, the concern. But the residency issue is a little bit of a sticky wicket because as you recognize, Martha, there is a variety of definitions as to what that means.
Yeah.
And that's kind of problematic for some of us.
Well, I mean,
Why-
I'm gonna make it very clear, I've got a whole problem with most of this ordinance, but that. If I'm the minority and it's gonna pass, I don't want it to be passed with things that don't make any sense. And to me, well, this is the thing, and I've said it plenty of times at this point in my life, I'm not gonna stop, only say it in hushed tones in private. It's like my next door neighbor used to say, when people asked him if he lived here, and he'd say, I live here, and he'd say, that people would ask him, do you live here year round? He'd say, God damn it, I told you I lived here. Yeah, that's John Littlefield.
Well, could we just have it say something along the lines, the designee is here at the time of rental? Because they don't need to be here in December if you're renting only in the summer. So
Yeah.
just designee is available on island at time of rental.
I think it's,
Or
Well,
did-
the problem, Neil, though, is we go back to the issue of absence. Let's say I'm renting my place. My kid has an emergency on the mainland. I leave for a day. A problem occurs during that day. I'm not here at the.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily what we're trying to solve for. We're trying to solve for the longer term.
You're right.
So if you know you're gonna go to Florida for 2 weeks, have a designee that rental is identified that Neil's gonna cover because I'm off island. I don't think it's that difficult.
I don't think there's a lot of disagreement about this one.
Well,
Thank you.
Rich is.
Thanks, Greg.
Rich has
I know
a,
he volunteered to represent
That's, yeah.
This kind of goes back to where I was talking about owner occupied. And, you know, there are times that my wife and I go off island to go grocery shopping and spend a night at my daughter's house, but we're still owner occupied. So it doesn't mean you have to be a resident or live here or when you live here. If during your rental season, as you suggested, you're considered falling under the owner occupied category. And that's why I kind of feel like we need to sort of find the differences in. And if, you know, if I've already, no town needs to know that I've already arranged with Mr. Fontaine to be available to help me out, buddy. If I get in trouble, hey, me and my wife are at Stop and Shop. I just got a call. Can you go over and see what's going on? Or vice versa. I'm still the phone call they're gonna make.
right.
And
Yep.
I'm gonna handle it,
That's
even if I
right.
happen to be away for a
I
couple.
think
of
that's
days.
right. Yeah,
So,
yeah. The person behind you, I can't see who it is because I don't have my glasses on. Hey, Ben. Oh, it's Ben. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Firstly, I wanted to apologize for my outburst. I
Oh, don't be
was
silly.
and so strong the past 10 days that I decided to mess with my meds, which makes me more emotional than my ex-pregnant wife. Or ex-wife when she was pregnant. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that for the council to be very careful sticking their hands into this part of the economy. It is very important to our island. I also wanted to represent why $250 would matter to somebody. In my position, I'm very privileged. I grew up here. My family goes all the way back to the original settlers. I'm so well set up, white man. I have a construction company that used to do $2 million worth of business, which is really easy building houses if one house costs $1.5 million. So anyway, I used to do a lot of business out here supporting a lot of people. I also in the future would like to develop my property for year-round housing. Currently, my ex-wife and I own a property out here, have owned it for 10 years. And we are just now getting to a place where it's paying for itself almost out of, and I bought the property half price from a family member. So
Mhm.
like, it doesn't get any better, easier
Sure.
than I have it. And I have $45 in my bank account. It's really hard to make ends meet post-divorce, life, right?
Yeah.
So $250 is like a lot to me, and it shouldn't be, but it is. And this is the reality of where we live and how hard it is to make ends meet in this world on this small island. And when we start to poke into the economy and try to regulate it too much, we're going to make people like me, where life is already very difficult, become even more difficult. And hey, like in a couple of years, I'll be making all sorts of money and like not worried about it. But there are people like me out here that own houses that maybe fell into them, inherited them. They have family, they want to live out here and work out here. And having a rental is making us barely survive. So if I were to be taxed a little bit more or told how much I could or couldn't rent my home, it would make it much more difficult. And if I lose income, then the ripple effect of that, the impact of that could be even more. Now, I, as an individual, cannot afford to improve my property and have a positive impact on the island because I'm getting drained because I don't know why. I don't know why the town wants to stick their hands in this because we have already had real estate agents booking our houses forever. And I'll also add lastly, that there's always one or two really bad renters. When the real estate companies ran my house or when I ran it on Airbnb or VRBO, there's always one or two people that are like, oh my gosh, these people are terrible, get them out of here. But we screen them as much as we can. And a couple of people make it through. But it's like, get rid of them in these Airbnbs or houses, just gonna be here. You know, we're not gonna, anyway, thanks for listening, man.
Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. You're next.
time I'm talking up here, so. bear with me.
Welcome. I'm so glad.
My
you
name
came.
is Patricia Thomas Wiedenmeyer. I have a house on Spring Street. I've owned it for 27 years. I go back and forth between, depending upon my finances per year and what needs to be replaced in my house, how much I rent.
Mhm.
And I'm retired now, so I rent more. And I find that I would love to rent off-season. Off-season to me is a lot of June, May, June, the last week in August and September, October, the 5-day minimum, it
Yeah.
would be absurd in my understanding of when people come, when the weddings are, when people want those long weekends. So that would severely curtail my income, what I can do to fix up my house, how often I can be out here during the summer, et cetera.
Mhm.
So that's my take. Of course, it's personal. I'm here because
Well,
it's personal.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would say is that I don't understand the size of the bedroom definition when in fact they could take, and I've seen renters take my living room and lay sleeping bags on my living room floor. So you could take any room, any 70 square foot room and say it's a bedroom. I mean, people have slept on my ping pong table. That was just a ping pong. So it's just, it really, that kind of thing is sort of arbitrary. I find that.
Just want to say for the record, I did once sleep on a ping pong table when I was in college, I think.
In her
I'm
house.
pretty sure.
But-
I'm sure
Yeah.
yours is much more comfortable.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
But just so we're clear, the reason that it's in there, one, it ties to zoning, but more importantly, then you get into septic and or bedroom count. So that there's a
Right.
reason it's in there, not is 70 square feet, the right 80 square feet or whatever, is trying to then get some form of, okay, how many people are in the house? What was the house registered for with the septic system, et cetera. So that's
Right.
sort of why the concept is there,
Yeah.
not necessarily, 70.
Well, if you're going to put fines on it, though, depending upon that, on those definitions, then you have to sort of
Right.
decide.
Unfortunately, my gut would say if people were putting sleeping bags on your living room floor and things like that, that probably there were more people in that house
Sure,
that were allowed
sure.
a septic.
Yeah.
And that gets to health and safety, right? So then there's an overcharge
Okay.
of the septic, et cetera. So I don't mean to.
Okay, so then the
that's why
other.
room is-
Okay, then the other thing is that, what about my grandchildren in their bunk room? So I can't have my three grandchildren in their bunk room. That's what it says. There's two kids per room. I mean, is what, so that's limited. So I have to take out beds now if I want to rent my house. And then the other thing that I was telling him, I buy a lot of liability insurance. It's a legit. I want my people who stay at my house to love it. I'm so petrified of being sued for any reason. And so I have liability. So I find that, making all of these other things that I have to do now is very onerous. And I feel like it will put a lot of burden on me for what you're suggesting right now. And the other thing about noise, I live next to a house that's a big rental. And sometimes I want that 1 week rental out of there. And
Yeah.
it's so noisy. I don't like their music. I don't like the number of cars. And then the next weekend, it might be a 3-day rental and the people are lovely. So I don't think that the noise thing, it depends on who's there. I don't find that it's just short-term rentals doing the noise or not. It could be a 1 week rental. That could be just awful. So I just find a lot of the things in here just kind of arbitrary, and you can look at it so many different sides. And I just want to.
Thank you so much for coming. This was really helpful.
Wait, so let me just answer one thing for you too, so this doesn't address how you use your house. So you can have your grandchildren, of course, in a room, and this doesn't pertain to that at all, how an owner enjoys their home. But when you rent the house, what this is saying is that you're renting a bedroom is based on two people, right? So I know there's.
So I have to take out a bed.
I don't think you have to take it out. I know, like you just say it's two people.
I've got a bit of clarification on that. Nick? Nick?
Yes.
So if we say, if it says there are two persons per bedroom, does that literally mean two persons per bedroom? Or is that an aggregate total? If you have 3 bedrooms, you can only have 6 people?
It's a method of calculation. We're not policing who is physically in a particular room.
Okay, like that's important.
Thank you. Before I come back to you, Arlene, I'm gonna go here, just first time. How are you?
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Pinto. My home's on Mansion Beach Road,
Hi,
across
Ed.
from the Littlefields property. I take issue with one article, the local representation residing on the island. I don't want to regulate myself out of what I'm doing now or become non-compliant. As a homeowner, I do my own rentals. I manage my own property. I've been doing it for 11 years. Out of 11 years, I've only missed one meet and greet with the renter once. That was this year, bringing my son down to Florida to college. I talk to the people on the phone. I do not do back and forth emails with prospective renters. I have a kiosk at the end of the driveway. It describes the property. It says do not disturb renters in place. So they could call me. I don't do anything by email where I don't know who's going in my home. I personally come up from Fairfield County, right next to Bridgeport. And
You were here while I was talking about that. Did you see that story?
Yes, I grew up there. Yeah. So anyway, I come up every single week, or if it's a 2-week rental, I show up, I fly over. If I can't fly over, I take the boat. As I said, I missed once in 11 years. And I have backup people here on the island if something happened to me. But I do my own property management, my own rentals. I don't want to become non-compliant to this new ordinance. I agree with some of the safety compliance issues. I would boast and say my house is the safest house on Block Island. And I say that and I challenge anyone. We just invested in a child vac system. If a child's choking, that's on the wall. We have a fire blanket. I have escape ladders, fire extinguishers in every closet, screen on the fire pit. So compliance with safety issues, I take no issue with. I just don't want to become non-compliant as a homeowner, renter, property management person. I've had 2 town managers living at my house. I've had our town doctor, the first one, living at the house. And one of the things, I want to have
interrupt
something where I
one
can-
second?
Pardon me?
So it doesn't sound like you're not compliant. You
Right.
are that point of contact and you have someone to hand it off when you can't handle it.
Right, but I don't live on the island.
Yeah, well, I
Skating
think
around
we've
them.
removed the residency.
If I'm not compliant or
Yeah.
accountable to you,
Right.
you could fire me. In the last thing that I brought up is, it says if unregulated can have a negative impact on our community, source of noise, congestion, pollution, disorderly conduct. It sounds like, in all due respect, we're describing some of the day trippers and event goers. No one at my house would ever act that way. I meet them, I greet them, and they know there's no shenanigans. They're there, they're paying a lot of money. Have a good time, enjoy your vacation. But the police aren't calling Ed Pinto saying, you got to control your renters. Martha Ball's my neighbor. She'll tell you that there's no garbage blowing across the lawn. There's no wild parties, nothing like that. It's just not tolerated. It's too big of an investment.
I agree very much with your property. I know your property well, but there are houses that have had renters, whether Airbnb and or some agents, but that have had excess people, or suddenly a tent shows up, or air conditioners are put in. I mean, they happen, right? And I do know them, so we don't have to debate it. But it's not about any ones, and it's also not day trippers that we're talking about here. It is a little bit to Ben's comment before. There are people that get through the system, and we just want to make sure that we're at least addressing it.
Good. Thank you for your time.
Arlene? Then you.
This is just addendum. The window ordinance is there for fire, and we're all much too familiar with fire. And you have to have 5.7 square feet to get out in case of a fire. And I know of some rentals, because I've gone in, they want to do a renovation where they just have a 24-inch by 18-inch high window, and those people are going to burn, which is, it could happen. And the other thing is, I think our realtors do a fantastic job with their rentals. But in my area, there are 3 houses that don't have realtors. And one, I've called the police several times, Mary, and they come. Now, I don't know if they do a police report, but all of a sudden you hear screaming and then silence. So, but it happens. And it's a renter who doesn't live anywhere near here.
Right. Thank you. Jess, you're next. Get ready. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you had your hand up. Sorry about that.
Hi, Gail Hines. I just have a question on enforcement. As we all know, that is a big thing on Block Island. If you have 500 houses that are going to be paying 250,000, 250, it's 125,000. You're going to hire one person to enforce this ordinance. Now, realistically, they can't work in the summer because these houses are rented. Probably not off season for a lot of them. What are they going to be instructed to do? They don't have to check septics because we have a septic inspector. What is their job going to be for maybe 6 months a year? And in 6 months a year, will they come to the real estate agencies and say, okay, now you take us all around to all your houses in the middle of the winter when we're trying to book houses for the summer? It's just, I don't see the reality of it. I don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, do you have an answer? Does anybody have an idea, thought this through? And it's one person, or you're going to need 2 people, and then you're going to raise it to $500 so you can make 250,000. I don't know. How is enforcement going to happen? We're going through all of this, but the reality is, how do you do it? My question.
Okay, thank you. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I think the idea is to construct a system that keeps it safe and rational. Jess? No.
Jessica Willie. I'm actually wasn't talking to Gail about this, but that's sort of my question. Well, sort of. The latest numbers I have, which are possibly wrong, were somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 rental units, which gives the town $300,000 a year. If I'm reading this correctly, it's $250 per year. It's not a one-time thing. So $300,000 a year is no an insignificant amount of money. And I'm wondering if that's planning on going into the general fund, or if it's actually particularly earmarked for this program, or if it's going into the general fund to be used for that. If it's not in a specific account for this, I would suggest doing that so that doesn't get eaten up by the general fund.
Yeah, that's
my comment.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I would like this money to be used for the program. That's my own opinion.
So it's $300,000 a year, about somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure where the 1,200 comes from and whether that's also bedrooms. So I'm just not sure, because the numbers I've been sort of working with are much more in the 400 to 500.
So,
but I don't know.
$250 per house per year.
No, it's how many units? You said 1,200.
Right.
Right.
Rental units,
Right.
not bedrooms, units. Yeah, so that's the number that I have from about 6 years ago, is in the neighborhood of 1,200. I could be wrong, but that's the numbers that I have that we work with in the tourism division
I think it's a good point.
when we're looking at taxes. So you might want to find
Your
out
turn.
exactly
Sorry, I didn't
how many
see
there are.
I didn't see your hand raised.
Hi, Hope Rosa.
Hey, Hope.
So how many complaints are there every summer about rentals? None of the rentals that I've ever come across have had issues that I know of. But are these owners being contacted, and has anyone been held responsible for issues going on at their houses?
No, I think what happens, and I get enough texts or emails about this, I think what happens is the police get called. The police try to manage it. I don't think
But
it's
do they
like,
have the police ever contacted the owner and said, your renters are unruly?
I think that actually has happened, yes.
And how often
Yeah,
does that happen?
pretty-
Is this such a big problem that we need to enforce?
I would say yes. If that's what you're asking, yes, I would say yes.
Okay.
Although you realize that's one very small reason to have a short-term rental ordinance. That is not the reason to have, there's no singular reason to have this ordinance. There are many reasons to have it. So that's, I mean, Arlene just told us she calls the police. So I don't know whether the homeowner gets contacted, but now that the police, like, so through this registration, the police would have the homeowner's contact information. So the likelihood that they will get contacted is much higher.
Okay,
Or
well,
they're-
all of the realtors, have the contact information.
Yeah.
For all of the property owners and on Airbnb and VRBO, if you're using those platforms, you have to provide contact info. So your renters have information, your information to, or an appointed person's information in order to get in contact with them.
But you understand how in a matter to be expedient here, that the town and the police would have this number in their own database, and they would not have to have somebody in the police department fishing around on Airbnb at 2:00 in the morning to
But
figure out.
the town doesn't have everybody's contact information anyways.
How would the town have that?
Yeah.
At 2:00 in the morning, that they're gonna wake up Millie and ask what the town property records are for an LLC that owns a house. This is the problem.
All registered on Vision Appraisal Loan, this is how we get contact. You can go to Vision Appraisal right now, you can look at my address, you'll see my name, my address, my phone number. Doesn't matter if it's an LLC, doesn't matter if it's a corporation, it has the name, address, and there's nothing.
But it's only as good as you update the information. So by doing an annual process, you would have current information. If you don't touch that database, Mary, it's static information. So if there is an emergency and you haven't updated that information, the idea of having a registry current would be able to reach them.
And I also want to say that, I don't think that the Airbnbs are a problem or VRBO properties on the island. Because most of those people are, the reason why they're managing their property themselves is so that they have a closer touch with who is staying at their property. And most of those people, at least all of the people that I personally know, are very in touch with their properties and care much about the maintenance, the health and the safety of the home and their renters. And
That's great.
yeah. That's
Cool. Ben, your turn. Anybody else who hasn't had it, who hasn't come up yet? You haven't come up yet. Bye, Rich.
Hi,
Your reading
Brian.
glasses look
I'm
good on
Brian
you, by the
Neville,
way.
and I'm going to join the chorus of
Hold on, just
why
a second. Hold on a second. I don't think our phone numbers are on Vision Appraisal.
Bye, Pete.
You don't have contact information on Vision Appraisal.
Hey,
I just
Ben.
want to clarify that.
Ben, I see you want to speak. You don't have, I don't want the lactic acid to build up in your shoulder.
I'm going to join the chorus of questioning, first of all, the real need for this ordinance. Congestion, well, the incident of the cleaners coming back to the house, I'm sorry. Once a day, that's not to me pollution. Anybody that owns a house is keeping track of his septic system. And if he does have people that come in and have too many people, they're not coming back, etc. Again, the disorderly behavior. I've seen houses, not to say perhaps mine once in a while, that has loud noise or used to. And, I'd say the rentals are, I see minimal problems there. But again, that's probably just that I live in a quiet neighborhood. Just to These.
Hey, Brian, could you just clarify? You're owner occupied though, right?
Right.
You're on site.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, now the state, as you probably know, has a registration for rental properties. I don't know whether this is has all current information or whether it has phone numbers. I think it does. And then we get into, are we making people non-compliant by putting in? I have seen some rentals that aren't on the state registration. How are you going to know if people are signing up? To use VRBO and Airbnb, I think Airbnb too, you have to have the registration number with the state. So perhaps that. Okay, yeah. So, I just to me, it seems like we're creating a problem that I don't see as severe. We're creating a bureaucracy, which I hadn't thought of the income and, what it was going to do and the feasibility of that. I do encourage, as I think it was Mary said, the older homes with one window. I mean, you've got doors, most of them a lot of them are 1-story ground floor. You're creating non-compliance.
I mean, I'm sorry, I just have to say, every ordinance creates non-compliance. That's what ordinances are doing. They're trying to bring something into
But the
compliance.
reality-
I just like that's.
No,
that's why
I
you change
understand. I think that
rules.
my personal opinion is
Yeah.
there are more pressing items and less bureaucratic things needed. And lastly, I do have to look up the definition of vicarious liability. So
Yes.
as I would guess, I only went to 1 year law school with Dan Quayle.
And here you are.
And I can't spell potato or tomato. But as I read this, if your tenant is non-compliant and you have people come in and tell you, oh yeah, we only have 6 people, and you find the sleeping bags on the floor, or, a tent out in the yard. So I am therefore liable, even though they violated their written
Mhm.
rental agreement.
it's a good-
To me,
fair
that
point.
doesn't seem equitable.
Fair point.
So-
Yes.
I think.
Thank you so much. Ben?
Can I
Oh, yeah,
quickly
yeah.
ask, Nick? Brian brought up something that we had spoken about before, and it could be in here, but I can't find it. So the state requires that if you're, that you put your registration number on any online listing of your property. And we had discussed that the town registration number should also be required to be on any online listing of your property. Is that in here?
It's not, Molly, and I do remember the discussion, so I'll be sure to include that.
Okay, thank you.
Is it,
Ben,
is it the same number?
I don't know. Ben?
If you have 2
Yeah,
numbers.
so in terms of
Can you hold
client-
1 second? Because there's a sidebar going.
I'm sorry.
And I think it's a very valid point. But Brian's question was, do you think a local municipality would have the ability for the platforms to add that and to enforcement? If the answer is yes, then you have an enforcement arm in just that alone, because it would require it for them to be able to post it. I think it's a very good question, Brian, to find out what will they do in order to do it? Because that then, back to the concern about accountability, you wouldn't be able to list on there unless you have your town number.
It's a
So
good point.
It's
I
a
didn't hear
good
it.
question
Yes.
and answer.
So
Yeah.
that
There's
is
another, but there's a whole another layer of this. Are we gonna have a number and is the state gonna have a number?
Yes, it's up.
That's gonna be
Well, it sounds like the state already does.
So
It's
why-
already
why are we
included on the
putting
website.
into theirs,
Um,
because otherwise you're gonna have a big problem.
Yeah.
First of all, VRBO is when they go to a small town and add back there.
oh, but they do, actually. So, yeah, in Newport and many, many towns, you may not list, on a platform without the number. It is something that they accommodate.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I don't see much of a difference between real estate and the platforms. I've used them both over the past 10 years. They both are very professional, have all of the legalese and stuff, so I don't see the town needing to get more legal stuff on our rentals. Then I also wanted to make it clear that as a renter, I have tried multiple times to book my home for more than it is supposed to have occupancy for, and real estate agents were the first to tell me I can't do that, and it's in my worst interest because it will overuse my septic and cause problems for me financially, not to mention the ecological impact as well. And the same for the people supporting me with the Airbnb rental. They don't let me do it. It's for my own benefit. So then with the building regulation, I have seen quite a few things roll out here, and to roll out a new regulation that makes people get up to compliance for evacuation for live safety issues such as egress. That is something that would be just terrible to happen out here. It's something that's important.
So what would be terrible?
To force people to have means of egress.
To have egress windows?
Yes, because they're already in compliance for their residency, for themselves, for their own safety. We have determined as a society that that's good enough because that's in the past. And once they perform work in the home, they had to bring it up to code. And that's as much as we can do. We're saying, hey, you bought this home, it's really old, the windows are small, but when you do work to it, bring it up to code so that the future people are safe and protected. If we go into someone's home and say, hey, you got to put new windows in it before you rent it, that's tough. It's a tough thing. I have really old windows in my home. I couldn't afford to buy a window right now. It would put me in a tough position. Do I think it's important? It may be. It may be very important that we do this.
I don't
But-
think that people know what they're getting into before they go to most of these properties, as they see in the photos of each room. They can see the windows when they go to the property. They know if it's an updated property based on the photos and based on the listing. Like people aren't, if you're renting an old farmhouse, it's not gonna say in the listing that this is a newly renovated home.
Yeah, they're trying to protect us from ourselves and our renters from us as well. So I get it. And there's a lot of good reasons to do some of these things, but I would caution the town to be very careful. And in all seriousness, this does make me want to run as a Republican to stop some of the regulation, but I am like diehard Democratic, love regulation against big businesses and stuff like that are taking advantage. But this is going against small people and harming us from surviving. So just letting you know.
Feel free to run. It's not like no barrier here. David?
David Lewis, Cunimus Road. This has been a very good session. We've all learned a lot. A couple of important things that have come out. First off, I would like to say, don't get discouraged by what everything you've heard, because there's plenty of room here for you to take additional mitigating action. Well, I'm talking to the group and to the public as well.
Yeah.
I urge you to take what you've learned, send the lawyers back along with your own input, and have another cut at various different things. Obviously, Rich waking the room up, and Ms. Monjay after him with regard to owner occupied properties. And I think that's worth a second look, or some sort of a carve out, similar to what maybe you might have in mind, or you hopefully would have in mind with regard to the real estate agents, to bypass, as Mary suitably pointed out, they're in position to actually perform everything that you're looking for in this regulation themselves, if we can take what Mary said as applying across the local industry. That's all in the good news category. I do have one question about owner occupied, and you can take this under advisement and act accordingly. Does owner occupied mean in the same structure as Rich Trethewey was describing, or does it include adjacent dwelling?
That's a good question.
Just for context, my wife and I rented 3 properties in addition to owning our own separate house on Lewis Farm for well over 16 years. Just that we were responsible for that. So we were owner occupied in a cluster subdivision that covered 2 acres.
Yes, right,
It's as close as being in your home as you would want
right.
on Lewis Farm.
Yes, exactly.
So that needs some clarification. I also wanted to get some clarification from the lawyer about what the word congregate housing is, because that is in the applicability section 8-322. And I don't know exactly what that means. I've seen, Google says it could be one of numerous things. Individual family, private rooms, private bedrooms or living quarters, but shares with other residents a common dining room, recreation room, or other facilities. And then it goes further to give,
Right. I think Nick probably has an answer. to
well, I
that.
just wanted to get this next
Yeah.
phrase out for the benefit
sorry.
of the Rich Truthway and the Ms. Moss, I can't remember your first name. Christine's example, where Christine was speaking specifically about rooming houses.
Mhm.
And Google would lead one to believe that a rooming house is also a congregate facility. So if nothing else, as we move forward, I think either we need a better definition about a Block Island definition for congregate facilities, or we need to not even use the word.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I wanted to address was, I didn't quite hear everything Mary Stover said, but she was discussing the taxes relative to people who rent their homes. And obviously, we all have to pay land transfer tax. Even I had to pay it when I bought a piece of land for my brother. Lucky me. Lucky Block Island. I mean, it goes with the territory of wanting to live here. But on top of that, I also know that we've always collected from our tenants the 7% sales tax. We've always collected the 1% state seasonal rental tax on top of the 1% local affordable housing taxes that I pay out of pocket. Specifically, I mentioned these 3 things because we have to ask ourselves, and Mary did make the point that some of those taxes come back, paid to the state, do come back to the town. But I have to wonder, and we have no statistics that I'm aware of in the community that can answer the question, how many of the individuals who are renting by themselves, as my wife and I did on Lewis Farm, running the business ourselves, actually pay those taxes? How many people actually have taken out the state sales tax permit so they can rent their house for 2 weeks or 20 weeks? We don't know those answers. And as we all will agree, Block Island over the decades has been quite lax in enforcing so many of the rules and regulations we have on the books. So if nothing else, that's a compelling reason why we should be getting everybody to comply and work equally within the rules of law established by the town and the state. As a community, we've given too much away in terms of bad enforcement of the community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's go from back to front. How's that?
Just to continue, again. I think it would help all of us is if the council could give us clarity. Are you intending to hire 1 person, 2 persons? And what will their jobs be in terms of enforcement? It's so unclear to me, we have a lot of people in
I'm happy
town
to give you an
hall.
answer. I don't know.
So I think that needs to be
I
talked through.
disagree with that vehemently. We're trying to establish a policy here and build a construct. I don't know how many staff people it will take. We will figure that out. But I'm not sure why that is a reason.
It's the
not
cost of
to.
it.
So
how much
you
is
don't
it
have
gonna
enough
cost if you need
enforcement,
2
but now
people?
having too much enforcement is a problem?
No, I'm just wondering, how are you gonna do an ordinance? And like David said, how many of our ordinances don't get acted on? So is there a plan you've got to think that
Here we
through
have
in
a
terms
plan
of.
for one of the first times I've seen an ordinance that actually raises money to enforce it. Now, what that looks like, I don't know yet. We will, but I
Are people gonna go into, you're gonna have somebody go through each rental home?
No.
no.
No, you're not gonna do that?
Let's also figure out, Gail, what it is before we detail that, right? So we
Okay.
just changed a number of things tonight.
Right,
And let's figure out what it is. Then what is needed for management, I'll use that term instead of enforcement. And then figure out, is 250 the right number? Should be 200, should be 300, or do we do it at all? So I think you got the, personally, I think your question is good. Let's
I
make
agree.
sure we have the staff to engage, to enforce, but let's figure out what it is first.
and again, going back to somebody like Mary, the rental agents are doing that job. You know, I still feel that. So, you know, again, up for
And
discussion.
I've been saying that from the very beginning. You guys have done this work for years and you've done it really, really well. But the market is bigger and has a lot more variety in it than it used to.
So you
it used to
couldn't
be-
separate people that don't have an agency, their rental units from owners that have a rental agency, that you would only
I don't.
ask the ones that don't have a rental
I
agency
don't know whether you can do
to,
that.
I mean.
I don't know whether you can.
I don't know how you
It's a
do
good
it.
que- it's a good
Want to do
question.
that, but it certainly makes it easier for them to comply because they've already, if they have been renting through a real estate agent on Block Island for years, they're already doing all this. So all they. have
Right,
to
so
do
now
is
you're charging them more
put you
money.
Down is their
You know?
contact.
You're
Yeah,
charging-
and so my concern is longer range and it isn't the rental market for the week. Yeah, I think you guys have proven you do a good job at it. However, the question that comes to my mind is, what is this adding to you business wise? Does it make your job harder? Does it,
Oh,
I
sure.
don't, but why? What
Well,
is
it's more
it?
paperwork. It's, you know, fielding questions from owners who are now gonna feel, are you, you know, you're going after more money from us?
But this could be, and I'm making it up. So those are solutions to solve concerns. So if we have to have a program that we do a number of calls with owners so they don't have to go with you, I think the town would be happy to provide that. I just don't, I'm not understanding what, because Mary's very adamant. She sent a note, very upset. What does it add to you as a business owner or business partner? What is it adding to you?
It just feels like the town keeps going after.
Okay, but that's not my question. My question is, what does it add to your job?
To our job?
Yeah.
Well, it'll be paperwork. It
really does.
So it's a one-time education moment.
will be every
Right?
time they renew,
Yeah.
every year, it's more paperwork for them.
For them. And this
Yeah,
is
for
where,
us, I mean, no, we're generating the paperwork to them in the mailing and the emails or whatever way we do it. But it is a lot of work.
Okay.
In a business that has a very small, rentals don't make a heck of a lot of money because of all the overhead.
Mhm.
And this just adds another layer to our day.
But I think we're not talking about what we always seem to think, I think we think is the real problem here. The real problem isn't the realtors. The real problem aren't the people who came to this meeting. The real problem are the people who are just sort of skittering below the radar. And is this gonna do anything with that? Or is this gonna make more work for the people who are already following the rules, which I know
I
is
feel
a
like we've had.
chronic problem with life
It's a-
and with governance, but I feel like we always do that.
Hope. Yeah, we have to end it.
So was there a decision made about the less than 7-night rentals? Have we already decided that those aren't going to be restricted, or are those Are there still words to be said about
I
this?
mean, I thought it was a really compelling argument. It's, as I said, it's.
Yeah, 'cause I would
something
also
that
like to
I-
say that there are a lot of people who only rent in the shoulder seasons and they enjoy their home during the summer times. So that would cause issues for those homeowners. And also in the shoulder season, people don't want to stay for a week often. They want to stay for shorter times.
Yep.
Also, sometimes I think people should have the option to rent shorter times where in the summer, like this year, this hasn't happened in other years, but for some reason this year, there were a couple of weeks where people weren't renting a couple of the properties that I oversee. So we switched those from 7 nights closer to the season. It was like mid-July and we saw that the end of July wasn't booked or the beginning of
Sure.
August wasn't booked. So we were like, okay, people can come and stay and enjoy for 3 nights. Because maybe they can't afford to stay for the whole week or they can't get time off for that whole week.
Terrific.
And then in addition to that, the argument of people coming to check the house, like the house checkers and the cleaners, like disturbing the roads. Are we gonna put restrictions on how many times owners can come in and out of their properties that aren't rented, or contractors that are doing work up and down these roads like that? That doesn't seem like a very good argument to me.
Thank you.
And then the $250 fee, that might be a small fee for people who are renting continuously through the entire season, but there are some people who only rent 1 week or 2 weeks a season. And that fee
Yeah, that's true.
is high for those people, because I do know homeowners that they're like, oh, we need to replace a few windows in our house, so we're just gonna rent for 1 week. And all of these fees being registered with the state, the taxes, all of these things add up, especially if you're only renting for a short amount of time.
They do.
So that's.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I advertise on VRBO just to sort of show my house and then I pass it on to the realtors. They did require me to register with the state, which I did through my realty company. And I have begged them for the number for the last year. I have paid the fee. There is no communication with the state whatsoever. So it's sort of money out the window. And I don't know what, I'll probably have to do it again next year. But I do, and I never get a number. I never get a number. And so it's just kind of another fee. The other thing that I want to say is, as someone who rents and rented off each season, our margin, or what we're making with now our property insurance doubling. In fact, I can't even find property insurance that will, because of the coastal thing. Now we're going to add this fee, the taxes that we pay. I am making much less money than I made 5-10 years ago on my rental. Same house. I upgraded all the time. So the $250 and that you now putting all these regulations severely impact the people that are trying to live out here and enjoy it and add to the society, and then just kind of stay above water. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I don't want to be rude, but there's another meeting of the sewer commission that's starting at 4, so we don't have a lot of time. But I want to make sure that we're hearing people out. Anybody else?
I was just going to say more, it seems to me a few non-compliant houses and rentals that are creating this problem of the big shop. And I don't know the answer, whether it's the lack of registration of the state. I was going to, I'll go home and look up the number of houses that are registered with the state. I bet you it's a quarter of what we can talk about as the number of rentals. I don't know.
Perfect. Anybody else? I want to make sure that we're inviting.
I just want to say to Trish that I can help you look up your number.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right. Gosh, you work for the state.
She works for the state and she's here to help.
So Phoebe McMillan, I'm a
Yes.
new homeowner. I just wanted to reiterate that we actually rent our house 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. Mary Stover, and Beach Realty actually take care of it. I hire them to do this so that I don't have to think about all these things. It's just like another thing to think about. And, I think the point is, what's the problem we're really solving here? It's not the real estates, it's not the Airbnbs, it's not the occupied owners. The people that we're trying to stop, there's no proof that this will actually stop that. Because if they're not being responsible rental managers, another ordinance is not going to make them do that. Just saying.
Thank you,
Like
Phoebe.
I just want to be careful that we are putting the right things in place to tackle the
Sure.
right problem.
Yes.
And maybe there could be.
Could you go to the microphone, please, Hope?
I'm sorry,
Thank
can I
you.
just say one last thing? In terms of pollution and health and noise. I live on the southwest corner of the island. I don't have a lot of that. I'm very far. We bought the house because we were the furthest from town possible. But the rentals just don't seem to be the biggest problem of pollution, noise, nuisance, health. I do think mopeds are very much part of that. And so if we're tackling this for housing, we should probably think about tackling that for mopeds.
Do you think we haven't?
Never thought about
Do you think?
Just
we
saying,
haven't?
I know that has been
Jeepers,
talked
that's
about for a long
what-
time, but
Throw out at this-
it's
at a
the
meeting like
reality.
this.
That's what I hear on my corner
Yeah.
is the mopeds beeping,
Yes.
not the renters making noise.
Hope.
And maybe instead of enacting all of these regulations, we could just enforce who are these repeat offenders? The people who, the houses that are having numerous amounts of people, the people that are calling the police on their neighbors. Maybe we should look into individual violations of people who are disturbing the peace, that those people their houses should be checked, but not everyone having to register. Because it seems like Arlene was saying that she's called the police on her neighbors that are renters. Maybe these people should just be checked on.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
My name is Rob Hayden.
Hey, Rob.
And we've rented our house for a number of years. I agree completely with Hope that it's these serial offenders. I take very seriously my ownership of the house and the interaction that we have with the renters, just like this gentleman from Mansion Road. And I think that it's a solution in search of a problem. I don't disagree that there is a problem, but I think as Hope just said, it's probably a handful of houses that the police get called from every year. And I say enforce the existing regulations rather than make new ones.
Thank you, Rob. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.